People in live with us. So Ross, we're live despite all of our last second readjustment to get the camera angle just right for you, right? And here I am with one camera and you tell me you have how many different versions of camera angle?
Well, I could go 4 if I wanted to, but I'll just limit to the one tonight.
I tell you, I love, I'd love to be good at all that techie stuff and the camera angles and the professionalism and all that, but I just have to be little old me. Although, mind you, you did teach us a hell of a lot when you came across to Dublin and helped us pick our Panasonic G5. Is that right? Is that what I call it?
Well, this is actually the camera which is my webcam. Is the Lumix GH5. So I'm using that as a webcam, and that's going through an A10 mini deck, which I can switch and do lots of sexy things with. Yeah, it just looks, a lot slicker especially when you're doing because we can't do virtual, real presentations and stuff like that. So being able to have really good image quality to a client comes across really well, rather than just a webcam and stuff like that, or a laptop camera. It does make a difference.
I'm just going to have to be just one of those poor people with a webcam. But anyway, we'll battle on. Ross, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Ross, just tell people a little bit about you for people who don't know you.
So yeah, my name's Ross Grieve. I am from New Zealand, but I live in the UK. I am a portrait, commercial and street photographer, and I've been doing that for about 25 years now, blimey. So started out shooting bungee jumpers in New Zealand. That was my first job. So I've learned on film and still learning, because that's what we always do. So yeah, and then living in the UK, which is a great place to be for photographers because everything's on your doorstep. So sort of really developed and honed my craft. Used to do a lot of weddings, and I sort of leaned back from that because I really wanted to throw myself into portraiture and also into the commercial side, which I love. And sadly, obviously now wedding photography is very, very difficult. But yeah, so, my business there had to adjust as well.
So do you still do weddings, Ross?
I haven't done one this year. No, I haven't done one this year, mind you. I'm sure a lot of people haven't.
I don't think there's been any weddings really this year since COVID, right? Or very few anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't market myself for weddings as such, but I go by word of mouth. So if people inquire through recommendation, I've got that luxury of going, well, this is my package, and if they like my work, then I can sort of choose that wedding to do. So it's not my core business, because I've evolved my business from weddings. I used to shoot about 30 high-end weddings a year. And then I sort of morphed that into portraiture, having a young family, so that was more flexible, and then the commercial side, and then I fell in love with street photography.
Right. So we're going to talk about a whole lot of things, including 4K video and all that cool stuff that I know nothing about, right? I can't even take a selfie. So you'll have to forgive me if I ask some stupid questions, right? But before we go there, I love to delve into the business of photography and just understand the elements of that. So when you say street photography, is that a business or is that a hobby, or can it be a business?
Well, it started out as a therapy. So because I used to sort of, base myself in Pembrokeshire. I'm sort of based in Pembrokeshire and in Cardiff now. And I used to want to get out of Pembrokeshire, out of that bubble. And I used to go to London and to the galleries in the Tate Modern for inspiration. And then I sit down, I started people watching. And then I took a camera with me and started photographing people and really enjoyed it. Got into it. Then I entered into the Master Photographers Association and won Street Photographer of the Year, won that twice with them. Been shortlisted in the British Photography Awards as a street photographer, but it's an incredible training ground as well. So people sort of think, oh, street photographers, anyone can do it. And I've had someone say, to me, oh, it's, anyone can do that. It's a very personal thing, street photography, because everyone's style is so different and how you see everything. The photograph is always there. You just need to take it. And that's where street photography is really amazing. And also, if you go to the same location every day, the light's going to be different. The people are going to be different. So that's what I like about street photography. It keeps you sharp. And then those skills transfer into my portraiture and into my commercial work as well. So, yeah, I love it.
So I think what you're saying to us, Ross, is that street photography is your love first. That it's for you to be creative and test yourself and your skills that you can bring into the other part of your business. But
that's grown to people want to actually buy my street photography now as wall art.
Right.
Which I find
Okay.
incredibly flattering. We sell our portraiture, we sell our commercial work, and then when someone likes my street photography images, I'm like, wow, that's amazing. But that's what we should be doing as photographers, right? We should be selling our work.
So the path then, just so I understand, because I know nothing about this, right? Mm. So the path for business of photography is, yes, there's the benefits of it makes you sharp, it gives you skills and training that you can bring into the rest of your business. But if you get really good at it, you can turn it into an offering to sell wall art.
Absolutely. And I think if you go out and you try something new, I think enjoyment is really key. And I think that's really helped my evolving of my street photography and in other areas as well, because I love it. I'm really passionate about it, and I've created my own sort of style. And like I said, I'm not the sort of person who thinks I know everything. I'm always keen to learn, and it's like a training ground for me, because it's very easy just to follow the norm and get on that conveyor belt and do what everyone else is doing. But if you find something that's a unique selling point for your business, then that's really cool and that's really beneficial, and that makes you stand out from the crowd.
So Ross, I know that you're a Panasonic ambassador as well, right?
Yes.
You got that right. Yes. Okay.
6 years now, I think.
So did the street photography piece help with that achievement, or was there any link there?
So that came after I was an ambassador, actually. I met Panasonic in London at the Society's convention, and they basically gave me a camera and said, look, do you want to try it out? I was heading off to New Zealand, and I went out to New Zealand with a camera, a Lumix camera, tried it out, and really liked it. I liked how easy it was, and it was 4K. There wasn't 4K video on this one at the time, but there was things, because it's mirrorless, I really like the fact that I could actually see the photo before I took it, rather than on a DSLR. Obviously, you'd have to sort of chimp on the back, have a look at it afterwards. So there was little bits of cool technology in there that my other camera didn't have, and they were heavier. I liked that sort of approach as well. And I think, and I'm always of the sort, when you look at a new camera, you've got to bond with it anyway. You've got to like how it feels, and it's got to be ergonomically good, and you've got to like the image quality. That's obviously key. But it just really worked for me. And when I got back to the UK, they gave me a GH4 and said, look, try this. It's got 4K video on it. So I had to go with this, and sort of got the idea with 4K video, I could grab frames, because the resolution is 4 times that of HD. You can actually pull an 8.3 megapixel JPEG from 4K footage. And to give you an idea what that prints to, that'll print to about 30 inches. So I shot that, and I shot a puppy in a studio running towards me, and I entered that, and I didn't really say how it was shot. And that won PIC Photographer of the Year, UK PIC Photographer of the Year. So then people asked how it was shot, and I told them. And I went through the whole, oh, that's cheating, you can't do that. But I was like, it's not cheating, it's just exploiting the frame rate and technology. It's a different way of shooting. And then Panasonic saw it, and they asked me to do shoot the campaign for the GH5 camera, which they asked me to. So they flew me out to Japan, which was amazing. And then literally I got back with 2 engineer samples. So you're not even pre-production samples to shoot the campaign. And it was just a whirlwind experience. And they asked me to recreate the puppy. The image of the puppy is actually up in the boardroom in Osaka at Panasonic HQ, which is quite cool.
Oh, that's pretty cool, eh? So,
that's pretty cool.
so that's really interesting. And I just want to delve into that a little bit. So you were a sort of a mold breaker in that idea of using this 4K video for portraiture. And I know some, as you say, some photographers say that's cheating, but it's probably no more cheating than Photoshop, right? Or anything like that. But so like in the same way, like you're an artist and you're creating using tools, and this happens just to be one of the tools. And that's me speaking as a non-photographer. I could be totally wrong, right? Because I haven't a clue what I'm talking about in this area.
Well, video's moving pictures, isn't it? So I'm just stopping that picture to grab that picture. That's the way I look at it. You know, rather than shooting at 12 frames or 10 frames a second, I was shooting at 30 frames a second. And using technology which I couldn't use shooting traditionally. So I was using a thing called focus peaking, which I would pre-focus so and it would show me the highlights, what's in focus in a color. Because obviously a black dog running towards you in a dark setting, you know, any camera's going to struggle to focus that on autofocus. So it's going to have to focus first before it takes the photo. So I'd rather be focused on a fixed point before it runs through that. Then the camera, all it has to think about is run through that point and pick the frame I want. And it worked a treat.
So where has this gone then, Ross, in terms of the business of photography? Are there photographers now doing certain types of portrait photography using video and using what you've discovered and helped them do?
It overlaps. So in my commercial work, I've used it for food photography. I've been on location overseas, and I was trying to shoot. It was a Japanese dish, and it was coming out of a Japanese steam was coming up, and they just wanted to look a certain way, and I couldn't get it in stills. And a lot of people think, well, you could have added that in post, but the client wanted it to be absolutely real, which is fair enough. So I literally flipped it to 4K photo mode at the time and shot about 18 seconds worth, so 30 frames a second, so potentially almost 600 frames. It sounds a lot, but you can go through that quite quickly. And when the creative director was right beside me, I showed her on the back of the camera and she went, that's the one we want. And then I went back to shooting traditional stills from other stuff. Also with portraiture, in the studio, there's a really cool advantage of it because you get the shots in between the poses. So especially if you're shooting with a model or a fashion model, and I'll show you some images soon, you get the beautiful softness in between a pose. You know, normally a model's used to hearing that click or the light going, and then they'll reset. But you're going to have to count to 10 and have some really cool pumping music going as well. And it's a completely different environment. And you know, you need to brief the model on that. But you get some amazing images because you're getting images you wouldn't normally get, and which maybe your competition wouldn't get as well. So it's just a different mindset. You still think like a photographer, but you, at the end of the day, you have to, you know, do your settings like a photographer, but all you're doing is exploiting that high frame rate of 30 or 60 frames a second. Now, I had a conversation with a wedding photographer, and he said, brilliant. And he was a videographer, and he said, I'm going to suddenly release stills and do albums and that. And I went, no, you're not. And he went, well, why not? I said, because you're shooting at the 50th of a second. And if you're going to be doing that, most of your imagery is going to be blurred because you're shooting at the 50th of a second. So you get beautiful, smooth, fluid video. So changing it straight from that to stills doesn't necessarily work. But if you're thinking like a photographer and setting out your settings manually and how you would take that photo, then it's going to work. So you can still freeze that image.
So Ross, I know a lot of photographers who are sort of location, say, pet dog photographers, for instance. Is this a tool that they can use to make their life easier and capture those movement images if that's what the client is after?
Absolutely. You know, if you've got the dog run straight towards you full pelt, you may get a handful of images if you're lucky in that run, and then you'll do it again and do it again. Your strike rate is going to go through the roof by using this sort of technique. Because you're going to, so jumping over a log or something like that, you're going to pre-focus on that log and you're going to get a load of photos around that. Because you want to have, if you're shooting like that, you want to have this beautiful fall off and separation behind, so you're going to be shooting quite narrow. So using 4K or 6K, you're just going to bag a load more photos within that. And when I got the actual puppy shot, I think it took 15 minutes or 3 takes, and we were done. And we got an amazing image from it. So yeah, it's really easy to implement into your workflow. And also with 4K, you can actually import that into Lightroom as well, and you can choose your images in Lightroom, or with Lumix cameras, you can choose them with the camera as well. You can save the JPEGs in camera. And people think, well, it's a JPEG, well, it's not very good. JPEGs are so good now, it's ridiculous. The image quality of JPEGs is fantastic. So
Ross, if we take portraiture that's sort of more standstillish, if we call it that, so newborn or family, if that's a word, I've just made up a new word, photography that's standstillish. Is it relevant there, or would you have the camera in regular photographic settings that you would use for that?
You're only limited by your imagination. So what you want to create in that image is up to you. If you've got someone static, or if you've got a well-lit studio, and obviously when you're shooting this way, you need continuous lights, because it's not going to work with flash trimming. So you need a reasonably well-lit area, or LED lights, and it's going to work. So if you've got, children running around a studio and stuff, it's quite good. If you want to introduce some movement into your photos, you can use it that way, and likewise, you're going to get the shots in between the poses. If you've got a model standing static and you're throwing, whether it's powder or anything like that over them, that's really, really effective to do it as well. So there's lots of applications, or a great example is kids with leaves, and they're chucking leaves at each other on a location shoot. That works really, really well, because you'll get that perfect frame. You won't be going, oh, I haven't got it, do it again. You'll get that perfect frame, so you can go on and get the next shot. So it makes you look a lot slicker, it improves your workflow, and I think it comes a lot more professional, because you're not consistently trying to get that one pose. You're nailing that pose a lot quicker, especially with action. I've had shots of water fights, leaf fights in the autumn, which look fantastic. Kids wrapped up in their jackets, or if they're running along the beach, it's easy to jump between 4K or 6K photos and into stills. You can jump back and forth. So it's just getting that mindset into your head that it can be done, and that's the biggest step. Just getting out there and trying it, and this is the perfect time to go and try that sort of thing as well.
Absolutely, because we've time to do that, don't we? Or I think you're in Wales, so you guys are out of lockdown, right?
Yeah, no, we're not in lockdown. We had a fire break, so that ended on the 23rd, I think it was, or something like that.
Okay, and I think England's coming out on the 1st of December, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's all good. So, but you're right. Like, if we can't operate for whatever reason, it's a good time to experiment and to learn these new skills. But I want to deep dive back a second, because you said something to me, and I'm saying this as a non-photographer, right? So you mentioned that it allows you capture that perfect frame, that 4K or 6K video, where there's some action built into the photography, and you don't have to worry about capturing that exact frame and start again. Does that allow you to sort of, I can see how the client has a better experience in that instance, because there's less stopping and starting and I'll just do that again or whatever. But is there an advantage too in that allows you can concentrate more on connecting with your client to get those perfect images?
I think so. And also, like you say, the client experience is paramount. If you give them a good experience, they're going to talk about it. The image quality is fantastic. There's nothing I find, and I've experienced it myself, shooting stills, and you know when you nail that shot, yes, got it in the bag, you know it. And you also know when you haven't got it, and you know you need to do it again without even looking at the camera. It's also that peace of mind. I don't use it on every single shoot. I use it when I need to. It's an extra tool in the kit bag, and it's there to use when I need that to record those fast movements or dogs running towards me, which is, I found the best moment, or commercial work for like limes dropping into water. You know, like I said, you're only limited by your imagination and what you can do.
So if you're doing a family session, say in a fall or autumn session, it doesn't mean you're in that video mode all the time. You're mixing between the two to capture different types of images. Is that what you're telling me?
Absolutely. So look, to give you an idea, so with, like I said, 4K is an 8.3 megapixel JPEG, 6K is a 33 megapixel JPEG, so it's decent size. I printed 60-inch, I think it was 58 inches from 6K, and I was only limited by the printer. So even on Micro Four Thirds, you can go big as well, obviously full frame. So yeah, I jump between both because I've got used to shooting that way. So I know this is going to work really good with 4K or 6K and shooting without really high frame rate. So I'm going to get a burst there. And some people think, well, it's going to fill up my card. I only shoot for about 10, 15 seconds to get there because that's all you need. And when you're outside, you've got the best light source in the world anyway. So you're laughing. But then I'll know, right, I want to flick, and I'll flick into manual mode and shoot my stills because the buttons are right beside each other, or I can completely customize the camera. But I've just got used to dialing between both when I want to shoot it as well. Also remember that video has less tolerance for your ISO. So your noise or grain is going to come in a lot earlier on video than it does on stills. So consider that sort of thing as well. But ultimately, it's quite simple. Once you get used to it and you'll know that's going to work perfectly, you can just switch between the two and the client wouldn't even know. But that's the beauty of it.
And Ross, I there was this number of years ago, there was a lot of high-end wedding photographers moving towards fusion, where there's a mixture of video and then the still and video. Yeah. And they would have, their second shooter maybe shooting the video as they did the stills, and then they connected the two together. Is that an option with this as one shooter, or would you still need two separate people?
You still need two because your videographer is going to shoot to get that beautiful video. If the eye likes to see about 24, 25, maybe 30 frames a second. It's used to seeing that cinematic from look of film. Once you start putting more frames in there, what Peter Jackson did it with, I think, one of the Lord of the Rings movies or The Hobbit, the eye sort of starts noticing things. It's not as relaxed. And also, if you're going to shoot at about 50th of a second, most people shoot about 60th, then they can introduce a bit of slow-mo, so it's they'll slow it down to 30 frames per second, which looks really nice and fluid as well. But if they're going to shoot a video like that, that's fine. But if you're going to shoot stills like that, yes, it's good if the subject is absolutely static and not moving and not walking down the aisle, and you're really, really steady, but you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself. So I think if you're going to shoot a wedding, you still need to keep them apart. The videographer is going to do his thing, and photographer is going to do his thing. Because otherwise, and to be honest, you're going to get blooming confused at the end of the day. What am I shooting, video or stills? I know the cameras can actually record to separate cards. So if you're shooting video, it'll record to one card. If you're shooting stills, it'll record to the other card. But that also eliminates your backup. So there's that to consider as well. Where if I shot a wedding, I'd be mirroring my cards. So I'd have a backup.
So Ross, before we have a look at some images, can we just talk a little bit about, I know you're a giver, and you give to community and you give to so many people, but can you talk to us a little bit about what you've been involved with recently? And I know we can't mention any figures, right? That's top secret because it's still on. But
so I was very lucky and fortunate to be asked to be part of the Eyewitness Doctors Without Borders charity photographic auction. Along with the likes of Clive Arrowsmith, Ian Berry, absolutely photographic gods that I look up to, and to be asked to be part of that was amazing. So it's a photographic option to raise money for Doctors Without Borders and then the international organisation to help their research with COVID-19. The auction finished on Sunday, and it went really well. Not as well as it would have gone if we hadn't been in a lockdown, or timing of things to affect it. But we're really pleased with how it goes, and those figures will be released soon. So I had 2 pieces in there. I had one of my street photography, and I had a fine art nude in there, which is something I've sort of been branching into, and that was really well received as well. So they're heading off to France, which is quite
good. And all money raised is going to the charity.
Every penny raised is going to charity. All the photographers have donated their prints as well, which is just, some of the work in there is just outstanding. So it was through Bamford Auctioneers, so I don't know if you can still view the catalogue online. Probably, I'm not sure if it will now. But,
yeah, I know we posted the links in our groups and 3XM Insiders and Photography Think Tanks, so you'll probably find that on the thread if you're interested, if you want to go and have a look. But thank you so much for doing that, Ross, because it's important to give, isn't it, to others? Because no matter how hard things are, there's other people who are worse off than we are.
Exactly, and it affects us all. And I sort of think if you can give a little bit or give whatever you can, then it's a little bit of help somewhere, isn't it? So, I'm sitting here looking at images, going, and someone's appreciated it, which is really cool for me. And then it's on the back of that, it's made me think about, well, maybe I should do more fine art and things like that. So there is the beauty of being able to donate and give an image or two. There's also, it gets the old cogs going in the head saying, I quite enjoyed that experience, but it would be good if other people could enjoy my work as well. So
yeah,
it's normally sell.
It's a win-win-win for everybody. The charity wins, the people who get help through the charity win, you win as the photographer, and the business person in giving. But not only that, the connections that you make and everything else as well can only help. You don't do it for that reason, but it can only help your business and you be known as the photographer in your area, right? As well as worldwide and everything. And I'm sure it'll link into all the ambassadorships you have with Panasonic and all other companies too.
Yeah, no, they were very supportive as well. It's great. So I mean, then what was really cool about it, there was so much support from competing brands, and that's what I really loved about it. You would have camera manufacturers talking about the same thing, and it brought a lot of people together, a lot of brands together, which I think is fantastic. And I think the photographic industry is an amazing place, and when people start talking as well, and people get talking and get creative and seeing what they can do and push ideas, it's an incredible place to be in.
Absolutely, and we're all in it together, and we all know the power and the difference photography makes. Yes. So it's great to see people working together, and we've seen it in so many areas now. People like you who come into Think Tank. We thank you so much for sharing your inspiration, your ideas, and you're helping so many people. You're helping people with.
It's fun, mate. It's people have been very, very good to me over the years. So it's only fair that if I can give something back, then I'm more than happy to do that. We'll shoot differently, and like I said at the start, and we're all still learning. The day and I never will, if I ever said, I know everything, this is the day I should stop photographing things. But every day I learn something. From the newest, you see some new people coming into the industry, and the way they're thinking is fantastic. From people who inspire you as well, you look at them and go, that's really cool. I'm not saying about you copy work, you get inspired by work, there is a difference.
Absolutely. So Ross, I know you're going to, which is very unusual for us on the Photography Think Tank, you're going to share some images, and I can't wait to see them, because it's something new for us on Photography Think Tank. But I think it's important that people, see what you can do with these skills, and not to look down on the idea of using, video for images, because at the end of the day, it's about capturing those images and relationships that your clients have, and allowing you the skill set and the tools, just like Photoshop or any other tool, in order to deliver that image that your client's going to look at every single day and bring a smile to their face.
So, the first image I'm going to show to you is obviously going to be ebony. So hopefully you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
And so this is Ebony running towards me, flat out, and she ran straight into the camera. And this was the image that won UK Pet Photographer of the Year. And then I got the commission from Panasonic to shoot Hugo. So this was Ebony. It was shot in Wales as well. And she is lit by 4 LED lights. So that you can see the highlights in her eyes. There's 2 down at 45 degrees. And there's a light pull around her feet. And there's 2 on light stands behind her. The only Photoshop that was done in this was to retouch. She had a white collar on, I retouched that out, and a black and white conversion. There was a couple of dust flecks on the floor, and the retouch was done in 5 minutes. I like taking photos. That was it.
So Ross, an amazing image. Just talk to us through though, because I'm a non-photographer, so that I understand, yeah, in case there's other people here who aren't as up with this as you are. So with this then, so this was done with 4K video?
Yeah, so this was shot at 4K video at 30 frames per second. So, you know, every second I'm shooting 30 photos. The ISO from memory is 400 ISO. The shutter speed is 1250th of a second. The lens was equivalent, because it was micro four thirds, it's equivalent to an 85mm, so it was a 42.5 Leica Noctichron, and that was set at 1.2. So very narrow depth of field. And it was pre-focused. So where her feet are, where her nose is, I actually put a bag there, I pre-focused, then I switched my focusing to manual. Then removed, so my camera was just sitting on the floor, on a low down on a tripod, and then she just ran towards me because I had a treat above the camera. So first one she ran through, and you know, she walked around everywhere else and then came to the camera. Third time she just ran straight towards the camera. I was just like, yes, nailed it.
It's an amazing image, isn't it? And just, it's as if she's looking straight at you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There is the footage online somewhere of the actual footage, and you do see her run straight in and take the camera out. So the owner let Ebony go behind and then ran off to the side. So there was enough time for her to do that and then for her to run into the camera as well. I'll just try and find, so Hugo was...
Before you do that, Ross, there's a question in here, and hopefully I can translate this. I think you can see it too, can you? You film in 30 or 60 FPS, but in Europe we use normally 25 or 50 FPS, PAL. Is there a reason why I should shoot at 30/60 FPS?
So if you're shooting 4K video for stills, you want to be able to shoot at a higher frame rate as possible. With 4K, you can shoot at 30 or 60 frames per second, and where the object is to get stills. And that's sort of what we're doing here. If you're doing video, normally within the UK, you're about 25, 27 frames per second if you're doing video. And yeah, quite rightly, in the UK, we shoot in PAL. If you're in America, you're shooting in NTSC. But you can change, but remember, a lot of this content is online. It's not, you're not necessarily producing a film that is going to go, you know, on someone's DVD or TV. It's more than likely going to be watched on a computer in an MP4 file or an MOV file. So you've got that luxury there as well.
And just, Ross, on the editing, did you say that you bring that video into Lightroom and then you look at the frames till you pick the one that's right for you? So
4K, I have a funny feeling you may be able to do 6K now as well, because just to geek out for a little bit, if you think of wrapping around video, so they have a codecs, which is a wrapping around it. So 4K is H.264. So that comes into Lightroom quite nicely. And 6K is H.265. And it didn't used to, and I haven't checked in a while, because normally I save my photos on the back of the camera. I have a funny feeling they may have updated it, and I believe you may be able to do 6K as well, but 4K definitely works. You can just import that and you'll see it. It'll have how long that segment is for, so you'll know it's an actual movie because it may say 10 seconds. And you can play that, and then a little toolbar below it is a drop down, and you can actually select capture frame, and it'll save it beside the video as well.
And did you say there's a limitation on the size I could print this, Ross? This?
Well, you're limited by your printer, but also by this 4K is an 8.3 meg camera, and I do my enlargements in Photoshop. And when I do change my image size, so which is Command I, you go down and make sure you've got the preserve enlargements on the drop down switched on. And what that'll do, it'll create little pixels so you can go bigger than the native size. And that allows you much bigger enlargements without sort of compromising any quality.
So if my go-to products to sell is decent size wall art, I can still use this process to create these big wall art.
Absolutely. So 4K, this has been printed on a canvas, which is in my studio at 28 inches. The one of Hugo, which is a 6K, was nearer to 60 inches. So yeah, you're limited by, obviously, by the size of your printer, but you can print quite decent sizes, you know. And most homes are going to be very happy with a 30-inch, 28, 30-inch print.
Excellent.
And so is your pocket. So the follow-up to Ebony was Hugo, which I'm just really trying to find. This was the follow-up. So this was Hugo. So this was the world's first 6K photo, if you like. And you can look at all the dust spots. And I've left it like that so you can actually see the detail. So I had to find another 12-week-old puppy for this shoot. And I looked and looked and looked. I ended up finding he was about a mile down the road. And he would not run to camera. And I was being filmed as well. You can actually see the process on YouTube. If you type in GH5 Ross Grieve, there's actually a film, and you'll see the behind the scenes of this as well. But he would not run to camera, but he was amazing. And I actually had him for a whole morning. He didn't make a mess in the studio or anything, thank goodness. But always something you have to consider when you're working with animals. They all have their own personality, so they're not going to be exactly the same as the other. You know, you would like to think you're going to get the perfect shot every time. You're going to get a unique shot every time, which is still going to be amazing, and the owner's going to love you for it, because if you could show the character of that pet the same way that you would of a child or whatever, then that's your goal, really. And I think that showing a dog running works really well. Now, I've had 2 Rhodesian Ridgebacks in the studio as well, and I haven't used this technique. I don't want 8.5 stone of pure muscle running at me and bowling me over. So with bigger dogs, yeah, I'm going to shoot traditional stills. If I was outside, maybe, absolutely, because you know, they've got a bit more space to move in. But yeah, you're going to make that judgment call depending on the size of the animal. So when you're outside and you're shooting horses, and this is the sort of thing you can get as well. So this was a December morning on Tempe South Beach, and this was sort of a bit of chance, because I wanted to use a longer lens, but because when I was shooting this, the firmware wasn't complete for final release, so that was even part of the challenge. So I actually used a shorter lens, and by fate, the horse came really close to me, and if I'd had the longer lens on, I wouldn't have got this shot. So, but this was from a JPEG, and I was able to pull that detail back because it's backlit, as you can see, and then on the sides, I've just put in Lightroom some graduated filters to bring out the detail on the sea, and then the rider and the horse is highlighted. And this is in the rider's home as well. This is Charlotte, and she absolutely loves the image. You know, having the horse's ears pricked like that was great. Yes, the tail was not quite perfect, and I know people who shoot equine will pick up on a little faults here and there, because I'm not an equine shooter, but the owner loved the image, and to me that's the most important thing as well.
That's what does matter most, isn't it? That
Yes,
the owner loves the image.
That pays the bills at the end of the day. But talking about kids, you know, in the autumn, this is classic 6K. This is my 2. Yeah, throw some leaves at each other, and you just catch that moment I've actually got one somewhere, and I couldn't find it for tonight, where my son threw a snowball at Fern. She actually gets landed with quite a few things, and it hit her square in the face. And the look on her face, it just priceless. I wouldn't have caught that if I'd shot traditionally. So
I was just going to ask that. I was going to say, like, if you had to do a retake on this, if you were shooting traditionally, there's no way you'd get the same expression, the laugh in both their faces. You just wouldn't, they wouldn't repeat that, right, the second time around.
No, exactly, you wouldn't. But there's also things when you shoot this as well to think about. There's complementary colors, which I look at as well. So there's, you know, Owen's deliberately wearing brown trousers, Friends deliberately wearing brown boots and a red hat because it's colors of the season. And there's red and brown leaves. So those make Mo's pop as well. So there's that mentality behind it as well when you're going to do a shoot. Speak to your clients about what they're going to wear, because it'll enhance the pictures even more. It's just those little details that can make your pictures pop. And when your pictures pop, you're going to have great sales as well.
And then just to recap on this, so in this session, you would do a combination of video shoots and then the traditional still images as well.
Yes, absolutely. And I did think about, people may be thinking, well, do you sell the video footage to them? And I don't. And the reason is because they can obviously pull stills from that. And I don't want that. That's like selling people raw files, so to speak. So I don't, because I class those as my master files. At the end of the day, people get shown stills at the end of the day when they view. They don't get shown a whole video sequence. So that's really important.
So you know the way a lot of photographers, when the client comes for the sales session and they're in the viewing sales room and there's a slideshow to music, would you use some of the video content in that or not?
No. No, because I think what will happen is you're going to confuse the client, because they've come to look at stills and then suddenly they're going to see video content. If there was another camera and I'm in it for behind the scenes and stuff like that, yeah, that would be quite cool, but not of the actual footage.
Okay.
So, because I think you want your client to concentrate on the images that they're going to look, and they would be distracted by that video content. So, yeah, just I'll keep it simple, isn't it?
So you would limit the slideshow then to a combination of the images that people might put together in whatever program, and to music. And if you have another shooter doing behind the scenes, you could bring some of that in as well, but you wouldn't actually show the video that you've created the still out of.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't show the video created. It's like I wouldn't show a client an unedited raw file. So I think of it that way.
Yeah.
Because I'm editing these images in Lightroom the same way that I would in traditional stills, but you know, you want to show your work at its best, or you show it to them on a reveal or when they walk in as well. So that's a great way. You know, would I sell them on a USB? Absolutely, too right. And you know, you guys have got the boxes and that which I use, which work really, really well. And it's just another tool to do it that way. But yeah, keep the videos and still separate. Yes, you can, when you're shooting, you can show them on the back of the camera, but it's really important. I think it's really important just to get that wow when they come in, they sit down, or online as we are doing now. Did a virtual viewing yesterday, and yeah, the mum was absolutely blown away. So you're just making that experience the best that you possibly can on a laptop screen. which is, and you've got to think, some people do watch the virtual viewings on a phone. So you need to sort of think about that as well. So it's maximum, even more impact now than when we did face-to-face viewings.
So Ross, I can see whether it's people or animals, you know, the action shots it can capture with the video is amazing. But you mentioned, so this is the model shoots, right?
So this is the model shoot. So this is an in-between pose shot. So literally moving the arms around and just getting that glance in between shots. So he's just moving, and you can see the movement on her arms and on the coat, and it works really well. And I like that movement in there. And the same with the next one as well. She's absolutely still, but I've just cooled it all down because I just wanted to get a little bit of movement in the tassels and stuff. But it's getting that pose in between the pose, which is really, really different. And you have to have really good music. That is the key. Really good music. Communicate with your model, your client who you're working with, what they like. Because if you put something on that they don't like, you know, you can just roll in the tumbleweed because it's not going to work.
So Ross, you know, I know this is a model shoot, but let's say I am a boudoir studio, or I am a glamour makeover fashion for normal people, not for models studio. Yeah. Could I use that? Could I use that technique here to capture images that are different than I am with my?
You could still use it, but remember you've got to use continuous lights. You can't use flash because it's video, so video needs to be reasonably well lit. Hence, I've actually got a light just off the side here, and the way I've lit the room here. So I've got a lamp in the background for separation and stuff like that, but I've got just a one light source here. And like you saw with ebony as well, and I've got the candles as well for that depth. So when you're lighting a room, you need to think how you're going to light it for, you know, video or stills, and flash is not going to work on video. It's not going to work at all. You can use a modeling light. I've used that when I first started. I was using modeling lights on my flash heads, and that worked reasonably well. But LEDs are the best, I find.
So if I have a studio, Ross, and this might be a stupid question as a non-photographer, but if I have a studio and I want to do a combination of this and traditional still, is that two different lighting setups then?
Well, potentially you could keep it the same, couldn't you? So if you're if you're happy with the lighting for the stills, just keep it the same. You can obviously adjust your settings and your aperture and things like that to change the look, but there's no reason why you can't use the same light source to do your stills and do video.
Okay. And when we're going through images there, I think I saw a commercial shot, did I? Did you?
Yes. Well, any shot that starts with a wine glass is pretty good.
Absolutely.
This is something that people can try at home. So a wine glass, or any glass for that matter, but filled right to the brim, just so you get the bubble on the top. And then hit record. And this is the beauty of it, because you can do it on your own, but it's quite good fun if you do it with someone. And then just drop a lime or coloured fruit with it in the top, and you'll get the splash. And every image is different because a splash is like a fingerprint. It's unique, isn't it? And then you can scroll through and have a look. And this is the most simplest way of getting you into 4K or 6K photography, because you'll start to understand how it works. You'll find absolute sweet spot on different cameras for shutter speeds as well. That does vary, but it's just such a good way to learn. And this is basically just uplit, is the way I've lit it with LED lights. And it's also a really good way on how to control reflection on glasses, because that can be a nightmare. So you can see there's absolutely no reflection on the base of that glass. And that just, you know, a bit of trial and error. People may ask what LEDs I use. I've got Bowen's mosaics. There is, well, this is actually the one I'm using here is an Aperture 120D, which are fantastic lights, and you've got full control and dialing up and down. But there's so many LEDs out there, which are quite cost effective as well, which you can get your hands on and just get used to it as well. But I would say if you've got modeling lights, give that a go first, because some of the lights now have actually got LED modeling lights on them as well, so they don't overheat, and that'll get you a good understanding. Some people have even gone to Halfords and bought LED lamps from there and started out that way. So you can be quite creative. See what the kids have got in the room. I'm sure they've got something. That's why I tend to rate.
So Ross, have you other images that you wanted to show us, or will we stop the show?
You can get back to my mic shot now. So,
okay, excellent. So I have a couple of questions then to ask. So there is one more technical question, but then I'm going to just delve into the business of this a little bit. So Tina asked again, so the quality of a still frame is better at 60 FPS, question mark.
Think when you're shooting stills, think like a photographer. So if you're going to want to freeze an image, your shutter speed is going to be higher. So for Ebony, the puppy running towards me, that was 12/50th of a second. So 1,250th of a second. So that was quite fast. You know, if you're going to shoot video, then you want to shoot maybe a 60th or a 50th of a second. So you can get a nice full video. I know some photographers, they'll want to bring in ambience and stuff like that. But then if you're starting getting around the 60th or 50th of a second, you're looking at introducing movement into your shot. So I say this is a perfect time to experiment. And if, you know, in lockdown and in the weekends, just find your sweet spot that works for you, because your style may be different. But if you're going to go out and shoot pets and kids outside, you want to look at it quite a high shutter speed that's going to freeze that magic for you.
Excellent, excellent. So Ross, I just want to delve into the business of photography a little bit now, if we can, for a moment. So, and I know you're from New Zealand.
Yes,
by the way, how do you create such great rugby teams?
Well, it wasn't great the other week, was it?
I missed that. What happened?
We lost to Argentina for the first time.
Oh, did you? I didn't see that result. And normally
I waiting for the little tick to come in, but so no, fair play. No, it'll wake your ideas up a bit anyway. So
right. It'll only make you guys better, because anytime you lose, you lost to Ireland over in Chicago, or wherever it was that time, and that was the last looking we ever had. You said, "Oh, we figured them out now."
Yes.
We figured them out now. So, but tell me this anyway about the business of photography. So you do a lot of international travel. So in normal times, so pre-COVID, and hopefully we'll get back to some sort of normality soon in the very near future. The business challenges that photographers have, do they change in different countries, or are they typically the same?
Gosh, it's quite interesting. I mean, I've shot all over the world. I think I always try and do research before I go, and you have to respect cultures as well where you go. So Japan, Thailand, New Zealand, which ironically is really difficult for me to shoot street photography, because over there I haven't got an accent and I can't get away with stuff. But that's the way it works when you're local, isn't it? I can play the tourist card over here. But I think when you shoot internationally, you've got to do a little bit of research. When I was in Thailand, I was able to shoot drones, and in New Zealand you can shoot drones without a commercial license, because it's different to the UK. Also, model releases and that may be different in UK, copyright may be different, and in other countries. So whatever country you're going to shoot in, just do a little bit of research. It may take you an hour or so, and it'll save you a lot of headache if you've got all that in place. And it makes you look much more professional for your client as well. So you've got all those in place. So it's just, to me, it's common sense. And I think it's interesting to find out about places you're going to, because you may be out there. Normally when I go on a commercial shoot, I don't have a lot of time to have a look around. I was in Japan last year. It was a 2-day shoot. I literally arrived on the Friday, arrived on Thursday, recovered on the Friday, shot Saturday, Sunday, flew on Monday. So it sounds glamorous, and it is not. It's lovely to travel. I love it, but I'll tell you what, it knocks the pants off you. It really does.
Tell me about it. I know it does. It does. People say to me, "Aren't you lucky you're traveling all around America and all this?" I said, "No." I said, "I love meeting people, and I love when I'm with people and I'm in the environment. But all the travel and the chaos and the airport."
Oh, you're on holiday again. Oh,
yeah. Yeah, exactly. But Ross, just on the business side, I want to go back to that just for a second. So, because let me tell you what I hear a lot. So I hear a lot. So I'm talking to a photographer in England, right? And you might say, have you thought about looking at this? Oh no, that only works in America. And then you're talking to a photographer in Texas and say, no, that only works in New York. And then you're talking to a photographer in Melbourne and say, no, that won't work here. Is that true, or is that just something we tell ourselves sometimes?
It's something we tell ourselves, because when I launched my photography business in the UK, I went straight in for high end, and I was told that won't work here. No one will want that. And I went, well, no one's doing it, so why not offer it? And I sort of went in with the, right, you've told me I can't do it, which makes me even more determined that I'm going to make it work. So I think it's the old human pig-headedness sometimes, in that comfort bubble, and don't want to sort of pop it or step outside it. And when you do try those new things, you know, the old light bulb goes on above the head and you're just thinking, why didn't I do this ages ago? So yeah, I think it's really, really important that if the opportunity comes along, you embrace it and you stand out from the crowd, especially in these sort of times. If you find something that's different, something that's new that you can offer your client that your competition is not doing, then, you know, grab by the scruff of the neck and run with it, because you've got nothing to lose, absolutely nothing to lose. Add it as a side package. And the classic one I did, I for ages stayed with the same packages. And I got told one day, why don't you put a package that you think no one will buy? And I said, but no one will buy it. And I did it. Next week I sold that package, which was £500 more at the time than any of my other packages. So yeah, I think it's a bit of self-belief as well. People, I think photographers get emotionally attached to their work, which is very easy to do. I've been there. That's really hard not to sort of speak less emotionally about work, especially when you want to change a style or introduce a new product or something like that.
Excellent. Ross, if people want to get more of you, where can they find you?
They can find me on my Instagram, which is Ross A. Grieve, or they can jump on the website, which is rossgrieve.com, and they can even look on my Twitter as well, which is Ross Grieve Photo, or good old Facebook, Ross Grieve Photography. You can see me there as well.
Excellent. And you're still doing the podcasting, right?
I am. Gosh, you know, a little. What day is it at the moment? So I do the podcast as well, which is called Talking Shot. That's spelled S-H-O-T for those who have spell check. And it's a very light-hearted look, but there's some sort of serious sort of looks into the world of photography. So there's about 50 episodes on there now. Due to get your good self on there at some stage too, Ren. So, but yeah, there's some real technical stuff in there, and there's some really laid-back stuff, and it's a really easy listen from photographers all around the world, which is amazing.
Brilliant. Listen, Ross, thank you so much for sharing your story, your inspiration, your knowledge. And even as a non-photographer, I really enjoyed seeing the difference with the 4K and 6K video, and how you can combine that with traditional photography to create sort of an experience and an offering to a client that many photographers won't have mastered. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Stay safe, stay healthy, everybody. This is, of course, it is Thanksgiving week in the US. So we're not broadcasting on Thursday, because we know all of our American viewers will be celebrating with family and friends, hopefully. And we'll see you all again on Tuesday week. So stay safe, stay healthy. I think I have to press a button. I think, Ross, I gave you the you'll have to press the M button for us.
Brilliant.
You full power. You're in control.
Thank you, everyone. Cheers.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.